I'm excited to dive into some fascinating tales from the internet's most honest confessional. People sharing stories about their everyday struggles and triumphs, all in the hopes of getting a little clarity on whether they're being unreasonable. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of human nature, one awkward encounter at a time. Am I the butthole for telling my teenager that they can't have a birthday dinner today as they chose not school because of a rash? My teenager turned 16 today. They are also autistic. This morning they came out complaining about a rash from shaving, stating that it hurt too much to have air blow on it or cloth against it, and therefore they weren't going to school. I gave them a few hours and tried again. They still wouldn't go. Gave it a few more hours, same result. Now it's too late to go to school. So I told them to text their friends and tell them that the dinner party, a mid-price restaurant, is off. Now they and their sibling, 21, are calling me an asshole. I feel like if I let them have the dinner out tonight, after they called out of school, is rewarding a negative behavior. If they were diabetic and had to go to the ER because of a low blood sugar, then were released, I still wouldn't let them go out to a dinner. Not that they'd feel up to it then, I imagine. So is this just me being a good parent, or me being an asshole? Edit. I'm still going to give them their birthday card gift tonight. I haven't decided if the makeup dinner would be here or the original restaurant on a later night. Now let's check out some of the comments on this post. Too sick for school, too sick to play. That was my mother's rule when I was a child. I'm in my 40s now, and still abide by it. If I'm too sick for work, chores, or obligations, then I'm not going out for dinner either. My mother's rule too, and I've adopted it for my kids as well. I think the crux is whether OP conveyed that to their child. If, when OP tried again a couple hours later, they had said just a reminder, if you're not well enough to go to school, then you're not well enough for a dinner out, and we will have to reschedule. Then okay. But if this isn't the norm, and OP didn't make it clear, then of course that autistic child, who typically already have issues with last-minute changes, is going to see this as punitive and unfair. I agree with this. My kids are autistic and they are allowed mental physical health days. Those are days that they can take off school, no questions asked. But the rest of their routine plans goes because changing that is a nightmare. Sick days are different, but they haven't had one of those in years. Anyway, autistic people oftentimes are overwhelmed with these kind of situations. Like if her son isn't used to shaving and he did, and he was sensitive to it. For me, it would be a valid reason for the kid to stay home, but wouldn't necessarily change routine or plans. And if I would tell them beforehand. If you aren't feeling too well now, we can't do XYZ later. Warning them beforehand is always the way to go because they often do not understand their actions versus consequences. And if we don't teach them now, we will miss the boat on that. My kids know they are allowed these mental physical days, as needed however. Due to clear communication, they nearly never use them. My oldest, 15, has only taken 2 days last year, middle kid, 12, 1 day, and youngest, 7, 3 days. And they haven't taken any sick days at all, as in like having a cold, headache, etc. And if there is an activity planned on the day, they decide to stay home. Depending on the activity, we will either go or warn that we can't because they decide to stay home. Never had any issues whatsoever. Yeah, they are kids, still communication is key. I grew up with this ethos too, and in the case of OP, it certainly applies. The triggers, clothes and cool airflow, would apply to both school and the restaurant. However, my doctor explained to me a few years ago that when you are signed off work ill, it signifies you are unfit to work. It doesn't mean you are bedbound, or that confining yourself to the house or sofa is required. Being active, seeing friends, attempting hobbies, or doing other tasks may positively affect your recovery. Too sick for schoolwork is not too sick for all activities. I don't know. If you are too sick to go to schoolwork, there aren't too many activities you can do. If you can do activities, then you can go to work. You aren't that sick. If it's a matter of being contagious, then you shouldn't be out in public or hanging with friends either. You must be a very lucky person with a physically, cognitively, and emotionally very easy job, who never experience any illness besides a cold, a stomach flu, or a slight headache. Do you think everyone on disability is bedridden? Are you aware about mental health disorders that affect certain abilities, and the differences between simple activities done in a way that works with health issues and work? I'm aware of all of those things. I actually get debilitating migraines where I can barely move without being in agony. Obviously, that's not what I'm talking about. Also, I'm a surgical tech, so I work all day in the OR and stand for 40, 60 hours per week on a hard floor. I also deal with patient illness and death, so not easy physically or emotionally. For being upset that I made some judgments, you're sure judgy. So, unpleasant things like work and school are okay to call off, but anything fun is totally doable, despite the airflow or whatever on the shaved place. And now for the next story. Am I the butthole for declining to fix the errors I made in a blanket I crocheted for someone and taking it back instead? I made a blanket for my sister-in-law Amanda. I was able to give it to her last weekend. She had asked for it in certain colors. I didn't have any other projects on my to-do list, so I was happy to make it for her. I had most of the colors already too, so it worked out. When I gave it to her, she was excited and she started to look it over. I figured it was to see how it was put together, since she doesn't crochet. After a little bit, she said that she loved the blanket, but she couldn't help but notice some of the little mistakes ID made along the way. I asked her what she meant, and she pointed out some things like ID accidentally done one row of striping instead of 3 for one section. ID switched to the wrong color and threw off a pattern at some point, etc. She handed it back to me and told me that she loves my progress with it and couldn't wait to see the finished project. I told her that it was finished. She looked down at it and said that it wasn't done until it was perfect, and ID made several mistakes that I could easily go back to correct. I was honestly dumbfounded by this. I hate the way perfectionists try to force their quirk onto others. I made this blanket for her for free out of my own free time because I love her. I told her that. She said she knows and she loves me for it, but that she wouldn't be able to use it because she wouldn't be able to focus on anything but the mistakes. I said whatever and took the blanket back and said that if she doesn't want it, I'll keep it. She looked surprised and said that she does want it. She just wants my best work and not something half-assed. I told her that if she thinks me crocheting a whole fucking blanket and making minimal errors is half-assing it, I'd rather just keep the blanket. She's so upset with me and told me I was acting ridiculous and that it wouldn't take me long to fix it. If you know anything about crochet, you know that if I made an error on row 36 of a 115 row blanket, that's essentially starting over again. Anyway, I come to you all lol. Am I the butthole? Now let's check out some of the comments on this post. You aren't being ridiculous. She definitely was. Super not the butthole. What she might be missing is that there is no fixing an error like you described in crochet. You either start over or pull out the stitches back to the point of error to resume from there. She couldn't be a gracious recipient of a heartfelt, thoughtful, homemade gift, and that shows you something about her. If she requires perfection, that's pretty incompatible with homemade. Not to mention super dismissive and presumptuous of her not to prioritize the hard work and hours that went into making it. Given that she's a member of your family and you probably don't want a long-term rift, I would hold my ground, but try to diffuse it. Just explain, repeatedly if necessary, that it's too bad your gift didn't work out, but no hard feelings. Do not feel forced to start again or to fix the blanket in any way. Try not to create drama or judgment over her for it. Believe me, her response to this whole thing stands alone. And don't offer to make her anything in the future, that's for sure. Not the butthole, not the butthole, not the butthole. Edit to add. By no hard feelings, I want to clarify I'm focusing primarily on how I suggest, express her feelings to others in the family, for the purpose of peacemaking. My personal take is that Syl's actions stand alone, and if keeps it unemotional and doesn't engage in any back and forth about it, that would be best. I would certainly be offended by Syl's words and behavior though. I am with you 100% until no hard feelings. If what you mean is that OP should drop the issue, not engage, and not speak about the incident, I agree. But if you really mean no hard feelings, I think that is bad advice. It is so important to set standards and to value your own well-being. Should remember that this sister-in-law treated her very badly, and she should minimize contact. She should not say a word about it, even if sister-in-law asks why she doesn't see her as often, but she should stay away. Life is much too short to spend it with unkind, disrespectful people. It's her sister-in-law, not an acquaintance from yoga class. It's up to OP in the end, But it's highly unlikely OP is willing to blow up her family over this. Sometimes you put up with annoying family you wouldn't be friends with, so you can continue to enjoy close relationships, the family members you genuinely like. And it's hardly a betrayal of self to make that call. Exactly. It is far more important to manage relatives than people who are random acquaintances. And I very specifically advised her not to blow anything up. I think we fundamentally disagree about this. But I also have been indirect in my response. So I will explain what I think the relationship should look like. If I were the O, I would not respond to calls or texts from the SIL for a few days, and I would respond by text with as few words as possible. I'm super busy right now. Hope you had fun at the movie. Over time, she will be conditioned to stop calling. I would not accept any invitations from her, with the exception of family holidays, if SIL is the host. I am not suggesting that OP do anything actively rude or confrontational. In fact, I am strongly suggesting that she do nothing but give her the slip. If OP doesn't have a relationship with the sibling who is married to SIL apart from seeing them together, then it sounds like they don't actually have a relationship. That sibling is never even mentioned in this story, so it can't be any big deal to see them less often. But all of this goes out the window if SIL brings this up again, or doesn't take the hint when she gets fewer responses from OA. If she is the least bit aggressive, I suggest that OE cut her out completely. Again, never with a direct declaration, but simply by never attending any event where SIL will be. Oh sure. I guess I envision no hard feelings as something expressed to concerned third parties. I certainly don't expect OP to have no hard feelings in the deepest depths of her heart. I agree the relationship between OP and the SIL is unlikely to be particularly warm going forward. I hope that it's not. That sounds bad, but as a woman in her mid-50s, one of my only regrets in life is making nice with people I should have sidelined decades before. If I had it to do over again, I would invest my time and energy exclusively in quality relationships and been cordially distant with everyone else. That is what I do now, and my life is so much happier. Learning how to be cordially distant is such a life skill. Too many people seem to think you can only be close friends or bitter enemies with people. But an awful lot of situations call for a middle ground. If UP wants to cut contact, that's her prerogative. But I don't think this is a situation that calls for advising her to cut contact. I crochet myself, and it's most likely that the SIL doesn't realize how much time and effort goes into crocheting. Criticizing a gift someone made you for free, out of the kindness of their heart, is an asshole move, even if it took 5 seconds for them to make. And the SIL is definitely being entitled. But the solution is simply to not make her more gift. Also communicate to her what the issue is, and how hurtful it is for her to act this way. This shouldn't be minimized, but it also doesn't call for cutting all contact with her. From what Op said in the post, they sound pretty close. Even when she responded to her SIL, she said, "I love you, but..." When you advise people to cut contact over every conflict that comes up in their life, it starts to lose all meaning, and nobody takes you seriously. Then when there's an actual abusive situation someone is in, if they come here for advice and people tell them to cut contact, they just roll their eyes and think it's classic Reddit telling them to cut contact over everything rather than taking it seriously. I absolutely agree that the OP should make her own choice about this. I see this as a more significant affront, because I believe it speaks volumes about what the SIL thinks of OP. Maintaining a relationship with someone who completely disrespects you can be tedious and damaging, especially when you're doing it because they happen to be a part of your family. It is possible that if OP doesn't make another gift for SIL, all will be well, but that is not what I expect. I expect that the SIL will continue to find ways to treat OP badly, and that it will be painful for her. I'm not one to recommend that people invest in relationships with crappy people. It's just not a good policy for a happy life. The first is what I mean. I've edited my response to hopefully make it clearer. Like and subscribe for more awesome daily Reddit content. And don't forget to hit the bell to get notified when I upload new videos.